live a few minutes late due to some technical issues, but we should be all live and all going. So welcome, my name is Jess Swart. I'm a board certified behavior analyst and I'm here to be live. I'm just making sure that everything is working and we have everything up and running here. Let's see. Just checking some settings. Wonderful. Now, if you're going to be watching the replay, I will be going through some little tips and start to get some discussion going around understanding why behaviors happen and some things that you can apply. I have a few other resources that I draw on and that I provide to help families who have a child with autism to build skills and reduce behaviors of concern and really support children to reach their full potential. I think often we forget to see the potential that our kids actually have, and sometimes when we don't have the right strategies or teaching techniques, we don't think that they can learn, but really they can. They have so much potential. Every child does. It's just trying to figure out how to effectively teach them and how to make learning positive for them, right? How to set up situations so they're successful, so they're motivated to do more. And sometimes that is a bit different to how we might typically look at teaching children who are neurotypical. So you know, we all have different elements of neurodiversity within us, and for some of our kids there is a greater extent of that, but that doesn't mean they can't learn and that they can't grow. It's just that we need to structure things a bit differently. Anyway, we'll get into lots of different ideas and tips later down the track. Now I'm just going to pause for a minute while I check my settings and make sure everything is good here. 1 second. Just going to try and, while we wait, I'm just going to try to make some changes here. Being my first Q&A, let's see. All right. So we will have a go at continuing on. If it's not perfect, that's okay. We're all learning. This is my first proper Q&A, so I am learning today too in my aim to set up high quality and good processing. I'm not sure if Facebook is liking the high quality video, but we will go ahead and we'll see what happens and how this turns out in the replay, and we will make improvements next time. Alright, so I'm going to try and keep an eye on comments. If you're joining me live and you have any questions, please put them in the chat. It's the first time today that I've done this, so really you can ask any question and I'll do my best to answer it. I think before we get into explaining more examples and for me to give more recommendations and tips and suggestions, it's important to realize that in these group kind of chats or live presentations, any situation where it's not a one-on-one consultation, it's important to remember that these are just suggestions, and it's important that you know that it's for information purposes only and it's general in nature. Of course, if I'm not working with you and your child and your family directly, I can't provide real clinical and prescriptive recommendations. So it's important to be aware that some of the information I provide may not be relevant for your child. I know that there are lots of claims out there to be like, okay, this is the one thing you can do to stop your child's meltdowns. And yes, there are some amazing strategies. I use a lot of them, but there are some situations where you try them and they don't work for your child. Maybe they will work at some point in time, but perhaps your child is not in a place to benefit from these particular strategies right then and there. So in saying that, it's important to know that the recommendations I provide and the suggestions I provide to you in these kind of group settings are suggestions only, and you will need to consult with other practitioners that are working directly with you, or do your own trial and error and have a go at implementing them in a positive way, and then see the outcomes. Of course, sometimes strategies take time to be effective, so there are times where consistency is important, or as consistent as you can be is important before you judge whether something is working or not, and whether you change it up or not. Every child is different, so I'm going to do my best to provide the information based on my knowledge and experience. But once again, you are the best advocate for your child, and you know your child best. So keep that in mind, and know that, and keep telling yourself that. If that's really what you feel deep inside, if you feel like something is not right for your child, then don't ignore that. That's a very important element. Despite me being very much in the field of behavioral sciences and the science, and let's take data and let's see if it works, I think there is also an element of understanding that can't be explained by science just yet, that comes down to our emotional understanding and intuition. I'm not going to delve into that today, but I want to appreciate that and want you to be aware of that. If you do want more specific tailored support, then you can always message me directly through Facebook or Instagram, or you can email me. So my email is jesswart@replies.jswart@replies.jswartbehavior.ca. A bit of a tongue twister, so I will drop that into the comments so that you can find that email. But you can also message me through Facebook, since if you're watching this, you're on Facebook anyway. All right, let me just quickly go to my comments here. Okay, we'll just pause for a couple minutes while I sort some technical issues out here. Making an adjustment, and I will jump back into our discussion in a couple minutes. will be back very soon. All right, the next thing I'm going to be talking about is just a bit of a foundation around behaviors of concern and some, I guess, misinterpretations or misunderstanding that I find parents will often have about the behaviors their child displays. Some of these are things like, my child is just manipulating me, or they're intentionally triggering me, right? Or they're intentionally triggering their sibling. So this mindset that we have that our child is intentionally trying to be difficult or intentionally misbehaving or, intentionally doing it to us or to others to make them feel bad and make it difficult is really a misnomer. It's our misunderstanding of our child's behaviors. Often, once I support children, say in a childcare setting or at home, and we teach them the skills and we set up the environment with situations so they can understand the expectations, their behaviors change and they actually show behaviors that are more likely towards pleasing others and sharing with friends and making friends and positive engagements with friends, because our kids want to have connections. They want to have relationships. Even though it might seem like that's not happening, some of our kids are also very happy on their own, but we find as individuals with autism or neurodiversity have shared as they've gotten older that human connection is still really important. It's maybe just not to the same extent or in the same way as others. So it's important to realize that no, your child isn't just trying to manipulate the situation. They're actually using their behavior to get something what they want or to avoid something they don't want. Or it's to communicate, right? It could be that they're trying to communicate something, and their difficulty with coping with these situations when they don't get what they want or they don't avoid what they want, this is what leads to a meltdown or a tantrum or a dysregulation. And then a lot of our kids find it hard to regulate once they're in that place of dysregulation. Or they find it hard to cope with uncomfortable situations and discomfort, so that difficulty with coping can lead to the meltdown. So the meltdown or the tantrum itself isn't necessarily the reason for it. Like, it's not that they're having a meltdown because they can't regulate. There is another reason for the meltdown. It's not just that they can't regulate their emotions. There's something else there that has triggered them, or something else that has led up to that dysregulation, which is what we need to be working on ultimately. And that's what we do work on a lot, especially in my sessions. So I want you to think about, when you're thinking about behaviors of concern, I would like you to think about, what is your child trying to get or avoid? So are they trying to get something that's on the top shelf that they love, right? Their favorite toy, their favorite food? Are they trying to get something that is locked away, in the garage? They want to go biking, so they'll have a meltdown because the garage door is locked and they want to go. Are they trying to avoid certain things, like running out of the store because they don't like the sound or the overwhelm? Or are they hitting another kid that comes close to them because they don't want to share their toys? And this is a really effective strategy, right? That child isn't necessarily being difficult or aggressive just to be aggressive. They're doing it because they don't want anyone else touching their toys, and they haven't learnt to cope with kids touching their toys. They haven't learned to say, hey, give me space. They haven't learned to take turns, right? So you can see that that behavior isn't just to hurt another child. Sometimes there might be situations where you do observe your child being aggressive to another child or adult, and it seems like it's come out of nowhere. You know, they've walked up to someone and pushed them, and then they laugh. This is not uncommon, and I've seen this with a lot of children, and there's a few reasons for this. One is that some of our children don't have that emotional awareness and understanding of how their actions impact others, and that empathy hasn't developed yet. So they kind of don't really care from that empathetic perspective. The other reason is that there's a cause and effect here. I push someone, they fall over, they cry. That's kind of fun, right? So from their perspective, they're seeing this as a cause and effect play type entertaining activity. Now, it's not entertaining in that I'm intentionally going to be spiteful and I'm an evil person, I'm an evil child, so I'm going to push them over. No, that is not what's happening. They are just responding to their environment, and this is a way that they are engaging in it to get some feedback, some stimulation for their brain, some interaction, some reaction, some response. So keep that in mind, that when you're not really sure why a behavior is happening, it's not that your child is intentionally trying to be manipulative. They're not intentionally trying to hurt you. They are reacting to their environment, and in the best way they know how. If behaviors have been occurring for a while, it's likely that the behavior has been working for your child in some way, shape or another, and it's working for them. So they're going to continue to engage in that behavior to get the outcome they want. It can also be the fact that they haven't built the capacity to cope with that situation, right? So they continually have meltdowns when the iPad is taken away, even though you practice it, even though you give a warning, even though you have a visual, right? But there's something still within that situation that is triggering them, and perhaps they haven't been able to control that emotion, and they haven't been able to be successful with coping with that situation. So I will give you a quick example of how I worked through that in a minute. I just want to mention a couple other things. All right, so we talked about understanding why your child is engaging in a behavior, and that it's not for manipulation, and it's not just to irritate and upset you, because for sure it's upsetting and frustrating as a parent. But it can also be to gain control. This is a huge thing, and we can really see control as a very broad umbrella over a lot of smaller situations and skills. So think about yourself. Think about your current situation and all the things that you do and all the plans you have in place, and all the perhaps like schedules you might have, the activities you have, the resources you have. You might have a car, you have a house, or you have somewhere you're living, you have a schedule to follow, and think about how you would feel if that was all disrupted. If you lost your car today, if you lost your house today, right? If someone all of a sudden came up to you and said, you have to leave your home right now and you have to go move over here. You are no longer able to take anything from where you are. We are going to give you a bike. Some of you might be bikers and love biking, so this might not affect you, but we are taking your car away and you're having a bike, and this is how you'll get around from now on. How would that feel, right? That is a loss of control. You're losing control of your environment, you're losing control of some of your choices as to where you live or how you live. You're losing control of your ability to get somewhere, get to what you need to do. And this is, in a way, how some of our children feel, right? When we lose control, we become dysregulated. It heightens our stress. We find it really hard to cope. We get emotional. We get reactive to small things that perhaps we didn't used to become reactive to. So for our kids, when they are in control and when everything is good, anxiety is reduced, or there is no anxiety. It's like, I'm in control of my environment, I'm in control of who I am, what I do, where I go, so I can feel calm and settled and grounded. When things get out of control, our anxiety increases. We do things to try to control, right? We pull at other strings or grab at other things to try to like rein it in as much as possible. So it impacts us as adults as well, right? So we can understand that. But in order for us to have, as adults and for children, in order for us to have the ability to cope with these situations that disrupt us, which is part of life, we need to learn flexibility. And as adults, we need to learn this as well. It takes time and practice, right? So being flexible, being able to roll with the punches, right? When things don't go the way we expect them to go, people who have the capacity to change and to reinvent themselves or to adjust are the most successful and are likely to be the least stressed, right? Because we're not trying to control everything again. We're not trying to get everything perfect. So for our kids, often behaviors are triggered because they're trying to get back in control of their situation. And so there's two elements to this. For our children who are wanting control of everything, we do need to teach them to cope with not having control. This doesn't necessarily mean throwing them into the deep end of the pool and hoping they'll swim, because that's not how we learn to build capacity. But it means that bit by bit, we are trying to support our children to cope with a little bit of change, get through it, deal with the uncomfortable feelings, knowing that the uncomfortable feelings will change. Nothing is permanent, everything changes. And then move forward on that and realize that, this was tough. I didn't like it, but I got through it. Okay, I got to the other end. These are lots of different strategies and tools that I teach in my courses, and the first level of my course would be the Behavior Basics mini course that I will be launching soon. It's not out right now, but if you do want to know about it more, then send me a message and I will put you on my list to send you the info as soon as it's launched. But this is just my basics course, and I do have my Busting Behaviors Protocol, which is a big 12 module all-encompassing course to understand behaviors. Some of the things I've talked about today in more detail, lots of resources that you can use and apply right then and there, and it really walks you through step by step. So every module, you have something to practice that week with your child, you have the resources you use with your child, and it goes through lots of proactive strategies, some of which I can talk about more today, and as well as some tools to teach your child the skills they need, and also a little bit about reactive strategies, how to respond, because sometimes we can't prevent behaviors and they're just going to happen. So we need to know how to respond, right, in a caring, loving and grounded way for our children, so they can feel secure and they can grow and learn. Okay, I'm going to stay on for about another 5 minutes, and what I'd love to talk about now is a question that I get asked really often um, by families. So I had a situation recently where a parent said, how do I stop my child from screaming when I have to end screen time? Like finish with the iPad, pack it away and move on. So this is super common. I wouldn't be surprised if you experience this daily or weekly with your child because it's, yeah, it's tricky to finish something that you really like and to move on. So first, we want to understand what's really happening here. So it's a transition. It's finishing a preferred and having to move to maybe a non-preferred. If you go finish the iPad and clean up your room, that's likely to be pretty non-preferred. If it's finish the iPad and come sit at the table for dinner, that could be non-preferred as well, or less preferred. Could be iPad off and go in the car. So for them, like going in the car is not as interesting as being on my iPad. It could also be that you are transitioning to something that your child enjoys, but the simple act of finishing and moving to the next thing is difficult, right? Even if the next thing is enjoyable. A great example of this is getting in and out of the bath. A lot of kids, you know, they don't want to get in, but once they're in, they love it, and then they don't want to get out. It's like that transition of like, I'm warming my clothes, I take my clothes off, I'm now kind of cold, I get in the bath, it feels weird, and then I'm like, oh, okay, now I'm used to the warm bath and I love it. And then the same, I'm in the bath, it's warm. If I finish that, I have to get out. I'm cold for a few seconds or a few minutes while I get dry and get changed in my clothes, and then I feel better, right? So just keep that in mind. Sometimes the simple transition is difficult. So that's what's happening. So the child, if we look at this from a function perspective, what's the function of the behavior? It's that they're trying to avoid finishing with the iPad or the screen. So what are we going to do? Okay, I'm going to give you a few tips around what I usually teach. And the first one is the Magic 5 countdown. So this countdown is where we say 1 more minute and then all done, or 1 more minute and then clean up. It just really depends on your child. You can give them an exact minute and use a timer. You could give an approximate minute. For some kids, I really just judge it, right? Some need more than a minute, some can deal with less than a minute. But I still say 1 more minute, because then in their brain, because I say this over and over again, they realize, oh, I'm going to have to finish with this soon, and it's going to happen whether I like it or not. So we do 1 more minute. We try to give our kids enough time to process that information. I would also have a visual for this particular child who is an early verbal, I would say early verbal learner, so like mostly non-verbal, but can come out with a couple words here and there, but they're not consistent, and they're not always in the correct context. There's some echolalia there. So I would still use a visual to be like, first clean up, then, and on the then, I'm going to put something that I know they also like. It's not going to be the highest level of activity or toy or engagement. It's going to be a little bit down, but still preferred. So this makes the transition easier for them, right? It's not as extreme, like, you know, you go from a hot pool to a cold pool if you're doing your cold plunging, right? It's not as an extreme shock. It's easier to cope with. It's less of a discrepancy, easier to cope with, so the child is going to likely have more success. The intention here is to help our children have success. Okay, success is important. So I have the first then visual. Let's say this child likes jumping on the trampoline, and I have the capacity to take them out on the trampoline, no problem. I don't have to deny them that. So I'll say first clean up, then trampoline. 1 more minute, and then it's time to pack away. It's all done. And then I'll wait. I might even play with them. I might sit next to them because I don't want them to associate me with always the demand of finishing with the iPad. I want them to realize that I can sit next to them and they can sit next to me without me taking that iPad away. But I also want to be close to them so that I can follow through when I do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Because when I do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 countdown, it's likely they're going to realize I'm going to follow through and guide them to hand the iPad over. And when this happens, I need to be close to them to guide them gently. I'm not going to be like grabbing and snatching the iPad from them. I'm going to be slowly prompting them to hand over to me. So I'm guiding them to hand it to me instead of me snatching it from them. So they learn ultimately to hand over. Yes, they might be resistant to this at the beginning, but when you practice consistently, you'll find that your child learns that this is the expectation and that it'll be finished, and it doesn't always have to be terrible. So another thing that sometimes happens is that children learn that you're going to follow through, so they'll run away, right? Or they might get a bit upset before this transition happens because they know it's a bit uncomfortable. And that's okay. For some of our kids, we might need to be closer to them initially to prevent that running away, because you don't want to be chasing them around and around. If they do run away, you're just going to respond really calmly and walk, or as long as they're safe and not running away in an unsafe situation, you're just going to remain calm and eventually go close to them to prompt them to hand over that iPad. Another thing you can do is you can have a go at making the transition to the next activity. So it might be like, let's go to the trampoline. Come on, let's go. And then when you're at the trampoline and you've taken their hand to go there, you say, give iPad, and you prompt them to give. So I kind of missed the modeling of the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I'll be like 1 more minute and all done. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All done. Give. Okay, now this give is really important, as I mentioned earlier, to guide your child to hand you the item instead of taking it from them. We want them to learn to hand. All right, that was a lot of information. So it's a simple strategy, but it's important that it's carried out in a specific way for success. So we worked on this, prompting this transition to another alternative activity that was a bit more highly preferred. It made it easier for the child and they could be successful. If they became upset, we know that this upset response, tantrum, meltdown, screaming, was just due to that transition and that discomfort of finishing with something that they were loving, and the fact that they don't have that capacity or skill. Sorry, they have the capacity, I would say, but not the skill to calm and redirect their emotional energy. So if they did get upset, we would play with whatever that other preferred activity was on our own. So for example, we would jump on the trampoline, pretend we're having lots of fun, and this would, within a few minutes, redirect that child to joining on the trampoline. For some children, emotional escalation is higher, and we may adjust things. For certain kids, being upset or having a meltdown for a few minutes is okay, and if we can move on from that, that's great because they're learning to regulate. If children are having a meltdown for like 30 minutes to an hour, this is where we probably want to adjust things. That child isn't quite at a space where whatever plan we've put in place is achievable for them, so we need to work on that. It really just depends on the child and the situation. So yeah, we would transition to that next activity, and then over time we would, as the child's skill built up and they were able to cope with transitioning from the iPad to another preferred activity, we then started to change that activity that was on the then to make it less preferred and less engaging for them, so that they learned to transition from the iPad to the car, the iPad to sitting at the table for dinner, from the iPad to going to bed, right? So eventually this child was able to transition, but it took time and practice, and really we broke down that skill. There was one more thing that we added to this, and that was teaching play skills, because this child's parents noticed that when they did finish with the iPad, he would have a meltdown, he'd eventually get over it, and then he would just wander around the house, kind of like tipping toys out, flicking the blinds, you know, kind of rolling around, sometimes would line some toys up, but really there wasn't much attention on toys and activities. And I'm not against children engaging in sensory activities and sensory play. We want to facilitate that. So the flicking of the blinds, sure, we can like guide that to be a particular activity that that child engages in. But what we also taught was functional play skills. So we taught this boy to complete a puzzle, to do a shape sorter, to build blocks and knock them down. And then eventually more detailed play, right? When we lead into pretend play, but he wasn't quite at the pretend play level just yet. He was really back at that basic kind of cause and effect toy play. But we taught him to sit, attend, and play with a toy until completion, and built that skill set. So there's lots of elements that can be pieced together from a simple behavior such as having a meltdown because the iPad is finished. There's a lot we can do, and there's a lot we can adjust if something doesn't work for you and your child. So ultimately the outcome we got from this was that this child was able to transition from that iPad to a less preferred. Parents were still implementing 1 more minute, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or a timer, right? So that it helped that transition. They also included a preferred song during the transition. So they would always play one of his favorite songs when it was time to move from the iPad or a preferred toy to something less preferred. And that just helped actually with regulation. It you know, made him happy. He was humming to it and could cope with that transition more easily. So we had some really great outcomes, and we continue to work on lots of other skills, but now this skill of transition is no longer a major concern. Okay, that was a lot of information today, everyone. So I hope those of you who watched that replay gain a lot from that, and feel free to reach out. Please do contact me. I am coming online more often. I will be back in 2 weeks for our live Q&A version 2. And yeah, contact me if you'd like more information about the Behavior Basics mini course, or if you'd like to learn about my Busting Behaviors protocol, which is the bigger, longer program that really goes into depth. And keep in mind that with this Busting Behaviors protocol, you do get weekly group coaching calls. So you get more specific feedback on progress and what you can do to take action if things aren't going the way you expect. So that's all for me today. Great to see you. Thank you for joining if you joined. Thank you for your feedback and comments, and I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time.